about real estate. All right, we're recording this.
Oh,
So anyway, that's a little bit of the background. The reason why we're talking about this is, to Rex's point, the values have gone up exponentially over the past several years.
Since
And
2012, home
yeah,
prices have gone up. Yeah, 12 years.
so every fall, a notice similar to this comes out in the mail. Official valuation change notice. And this is something that, at least for me, I never paid a whole lot of attention to it, because it says this is not a tax bill. And I'm like, phew, it's not a tax bill. And when I would look at the previous, what it talks about, is it, in this case, this is just a sample from one of the hearings that I was on last week. This one was the 2023 assessment year for property taxes payable in 2024. So the valuation notices that we're going to be getting here in the next week or two are going to say 2024 assessment year for property taxes payable in 2025. So it's always a year behind, right? So this is the values based on the prior year. And so just keeping that in mind as we bump along here. So on these notices, it gives you your previous market value, and it breaks up the land, and it breaks up the building, or the
Home.
And then it gives you a total value, and then underneath that it gives you your new market value, and it breaks that up as well. And in this case, I'm seeing that the previous total value was $562,000. And over the course of 1 year, it went up to 680. So $120,000 increase in value in 1 year.
Jen, is that your home you're looking at?
No.
You just picked a random house, or what?
This is just a random example.
Okay.
So it goes on to say, the number one, per Washington state law, property is assessed at 100% of the true and fair value unless otherwise provided by law. So I'm going to have Lord speak to this a little bit, because she's a market expert on what has been going on. But the assessor's office actually has a duty to bring the tax assessed values up to fair market value. And historically, they have not been doing that. And they actually got a slap on the hand by the Department of Revenue to say, hey, you guys are falling short up there in Whatcom County. Your tax assessed values on average are only about 90% of what we consider fair market value.
And I want to step in for just a second here too, because I remember I've been in real estate for 15 years plus. And when I would look at people's assessed value, it was just generally 20%. And this was, just a real generalization, but it was generally 20% lower, for sure 15 years ago, than what their really fair market value was. So that was kind of standard. So this is what Jen's talking about, that, they got slapped on the hand saying your values are under. So that's was true. And people got used to those values being under for quite a while. Okay, go ahead, Jen, sorry.
Yeah. So I put a slide up here to, so I tend to start yammering on, and then I forget that I have a slide deck. So what are property tax? What is it anyway? So it's the process of determining the market value of property for tax purposes. So I bring this up because we get a big outcry from folks in these hearings that my taxes are so expensive, right? And what we're really talking about here is the value of your home and the land. We're not talking about how much tax you're paying. Obviously, there's a direct correlation with that. If the values of your home and your land go up, and we as voters pass a bunch of different bonds and levies, and then those taxes are going to increase. So we as a board don't have any control over the amount of tax, because those things are voted on by the taxpayers. But what we can talk to you about is how these values were arrived at by the assessor, and what you can do when you feel like it is just so there's such a huge discrepancy. Okay, so every year the valuation is conducted by the county assessor. And I remember a time too when we were seeing a lot of foreclosures and short sales, that the counties weren't touching the tax values. And in fact, they're not required to do that. They're only required to do it every 6 years. But when we are in a market like what we've been in over the course of the last 5 years or so, we're seeing them get in there and making sure that they're taking a really close look at the valuations.
Wait, Jen, I got to ask you, got to clarify that. Did you say they're only required to every 6 years?
Yeah, so if you remember back when we were seeing a lot of short sales
Yeah.
and foreclosures, a lot
Yes.
of those, in a lot of cases at that moment in time, the tax values were higher
Then the house value.
than
Yep.
fair market value.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. Mhm.
And that's not what we're seeing anymore.
No. Those days are
Okay.
gone.
So obviously, why is this important? You know, your valuation determines the amount of property tax you're going to owe, right? So it's really important that that information is accurate so that you're paying the correct amount of taxes. It ensures that taxes are distributed fairly among property owners. And it helps fund local services such as schools, public safety, and infrastructure. So jumping back to this, and I kind of skipped ahead at the very beginning. So these are the different factors that are affecting the property valuation. And this is why I wanted Laura to talk a little bit about what have we been seeing in our market with the increases in values. So,
okay, should I talk about that right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I every month I do I dive into a statistic to see how the months, so the end of September, I compared just recently, I just did the end of September 2024 to the end of September 2023. So I do a year, you know, like what were home prices like, what were all the stats besides home prices. But what I can tell you, in Whatcom County in the end of September, the median priced home was 585,000, and now it's 630. So prices that have increased by 7%. In Bellingham, the median priced home in September 2023 was 659, and now it's 725. So in Bellingham, prices have increased 9%. And in Skagit County, it's about 7% increase. They went from 540,000 up to 580. So across the board, when I'm looking at statistics, home prices have continued to increase. So, and again, I look month by month. So this is the trend that we're having. The months of supply I also look at, but we're not going to worry about that. Just home prices, I think, is just the main thing. But I mean, I guess I can say that why are home prices up is because we have a lack of inventory still. It's still very much a seller's market. And partly it's still a seller's market is basically because of the high interest rates, many people, I feel like they're caught. They don't want to sell because now they have a 3% loan. And if they sell and buy something else, if they, upsize, their payments are going to be ridiculous. I go over that all the time with people, and so does Jen. It's just almost impossible to make it. People say, why should I sell right now if if I'm really downsizing, but really I don't get anything more. The cost of my mortgage is the same and I have a smaller house, and I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't. So it all depends. So that's why we have a shortage of homes, because people are kind of stuck. They're not wanting to lose. And I forgot what the statistics were, but it was pretty high, that like 90%, 85 to 90% of people have mortgages that are around 3%. And now interest rates are 6.25% to 6.3%. So.
Well, if we think about what has gone on, and even if we just go back so far as COVID, right? Like let's just talk about early 2020 to present. I think about all of a sudden we've got really low interest rates. All of a sudden we have another reason for people to move to Whatcom County, right? We've got a bunch of people that were given permanent remote status. So they're moving out of their big cities and they're moving to a beautiful place like Whatcom County. And they can get a lot more bang for their buck if they're coming from places like Seattle or San Francisco or wherever it is. And so our local, just the economics around this, we continue to have a housing shortage. We continue to have not enough inventory for the demand for all the people that want to be here. So I've been saying for a long time that COVID is just one more layer. It's one more reason why people are drawn to this area, on top of all the other reasons that have been around for a long time, right? People are escaping something, right? Whether it's they're escaping the heat, they're escaping the droughts, they're escaping the traffic, they're escaping whatever it is to come to a beautiful place like this. So we continue to have this huge demand up here. And it's, these are things that we learned in elementary school. With that increase of demand and limited supply, it is going to continue to push our housing prices up and up and up and up.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to just step in for a second because we're already starting to get questions. And Meredith, I just want you to know that Jen is going to be talking about that. It's just like, how do you figure out what our property is worth? So you can check to see if the county is correct or not. But let's just start with, say you got an evaluation, Jen, and the evaluation you feel is too high.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're going, these guys are ripping me off.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Let's start with that.
Let's just run through this, right?
Okay.
So you get your valuation notice. You notice that it includes the previous value, the new value. You review it closely. You're like, oh my gosh, what is going on? Valuation appears too high or doesn't reflect the market conditions. Maybe there are some errors in the property details, right? Maybe the county does not have accurate square footage, as an example.
And a lot of times they don't have accurate stuff because I'm checking them all the time. So that's always true. And by the way, tip, if they have, if they are airing and they have, you have more square footage than they're showing, you don't want to correct them if you don't want your taxes to increase. Keep your lower square footage, unless you're selling, but even then, we can deal with that at that time. But otherwise, if they don't have that correct, just let that go.
Yeah. And then, the other time that you should consider appealing is if there's some significant damage or changes to the property. So I've listened to a lot of appeals where it's like, my goodness, yes, maybe I have 5 acres, but it's completely encumbered by wetlands. You can't build on it. You can't even have animals on it. Or maybe the neighbor is ejecting water onto the property, or maybe it was impacted by a major flood event. These are all things that the assessor's office can't see, and that we can't see. So the more evidence that you can provide at the hearing, the better your chances are of getting that tax value reduced. So this is what you need to do. And I'll get into, what where should you get your information to, help you determine whether or not it's your intuition is correct when you take a look at that. So,
and before we even started this meeting, we were talking to Rex on here, and he was saying that it didn't, he was not happy with his tax evaluation. And so it's just like, what do you do? And so I think that's all of our questions right now. So what do you do? And Rex, you had one more thing that you told me, and now I just lost it. But anyways, you want to
just in the last 5 years, it's gone up 250%. So it's not, I everything that I've read in the papers and everywhere else, it's been 10 or 15% per annum. It doesn't add up to 250%, right?
Yeah.
So something's an anomaly. And then the other comment I made was that I'm in a neighborhood where there are some very high-end homes. And so, somebody might have granite and they might have a square footage cost that is significantly greater because the interior has a lot of invested upgrades that don't deal with just straight square footage either.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So a couple comments. The first comment that I want to make is that any given year, 5/6 of the county is done by statistical analysis, and only 1/6 of the county is, quote, physically inspected. And when I mean physically inspected, it means that the assessor's office is pulling up in their vehicle and taking a look at the exterior of the house. Nobody's going inside the house to see whether or not you've made those big upgrades like your neighbor has. And so when you're relying on statistical analysis, it's not always correct. And we've seen those numbers be way off, and those are the majority of the petitions that we're getting are the ones that are done by statistical analysis. So keep that in mind. In this year, we received 1,800 petitions. Not all of those, we're not in hearings on all of those. Some of those, get remedied right away by writing to the Board of Equalization or going to the assessor's office. You've gathered your evidence and you're like, this is way off, right? But until people bring it to the attention of the assessor or to us on the Board of Equalization, we just really don't know. So as I was saying at the beginning, we as a board have to presume that the assessor is correct in their value unless somebody can show us otherwise. So the best place to get the most accurate information is to contact a real estate professional. I know that consumers, at your fingertips, you have websites like Zillow and Redfin. And we see a lot of people bring in comparable sales data from either of those places. And those websites show the data. It shows the comparable homes that were used in, to find the Zestimate. I'm well aware of that. And if that's all that you've got, if you don't have somebody that you want to call, a realtor that you want to call, then by all means use that, right? If that's all that you've got. But better would be to contact a realtor who's got access to the MLS, who actually knows the neighborhoods. Because what I find when I sit down with my clients is that Zillow and Redfin, those are a really good starting place, but the comparable sales that they're using aren't always the most relevant. and we're going to help you with relevant. So to Rex's point, if he's surrounded by a whole bunch of new construction or much bigger homes, and he believes that that is what is being used to create his value, then we need to get somebody in there to help you provide that evidence so that you can bring it to the Board of Equalization. And the board, relies heavily on comparable sales data to help us overrule these decisions by the assessor's office. That is the very best thing. A lot of photos. If you've got a whole bunch of deficiencies on your home, bring in a bunch of photos. That's the only way that we're able to see it, because like I said, when the assessor is going out and they're doing their physical appraisal, they're not getting out there and doing any sort of an inspection. So if you've got the deck that's rotten off your house, or the 30-year-old roof, or downspouts that are falling off, or let's say you're right, maybe back when this tax valuation notice came out, you had half of your house ripped apart, and and we've seen these kinds of photos. It's like, there's no way that my house would have sold for this amount of money, because I had the entire upstairs torn apart, or the plumbing doesn't work, or it froze, and whatever it is, bringing in photos to be able to provide that evidence is really going to help us with our decision. It's also really helpful that you actually show up to the hearing. So don't rely on just sending in the data. We are a friendly group of people. Nobody should be intimidated by somebody like me, right? We're just people. We're there listening. Help me help you. That's what we're there for. You have a right to this, and this is your day in court. So, once you fill out your petition, you gather up all of your evidence, you send that in, and you only have a certain amount of time to do this, by the way, right? You get your valuation notice, and it says you have about 30 days to appeal to the Board of Equalization. And I did find out that if, let's say, you were out of the country when this notice went out, they actually changed the valuations on the assessor's website pretty darn close to the same day that these notices go out. So there's not a lot of lag time. So you can be checking their website as well for that. Once you attend the hearing, this is how it goes, you guys. You show up, it's via Zoom more often than not. You do have the option, if you really want to have an in-person hearing. You get sworn in. Your petition is read into the record. You, as the petitioner, get 10 minutes to appeal. So just know that we, as a board, we get all of the information sent to us ahead of the hearing, and we have an opportunity to review that before the petitioner goes to the hearing.
Okay, so Jen, so if somebody has talked to a realtor, you, me, whoever, and has some stats that they have to submit those before the day of the hearing, is that correct? They don't just have those? Okay.
Yes. And then if there's any, let's say you gathered up additional information, you can always read information into the record, right? I told my story about how I got involved in the Board of Equalization anyway. Well, the time to submit information was long gone. I didn't know that. I just showed up, right? And I had an opportunity to read my information into the record. I couldn't provide that via Zoom. I couldn't get in presenter mode and show them that, but I could talk to them about it. And you, as a petitioner, you have that same opportunity as well. But yes, you get these valuation notices, and if you think that it's way off, that's your time to start gathering up comparable sales data, taking photos of your place, getting that petition in, attending the hearing. And then once you have your chance to speak, then the assessor's office gets 10 minutes to plead their case as well. And we conclude the hearing. They only last 30 minutes. And then we make a decision within 45 days. We get a decision back to the petitioner. And it's always, we always make a decision the day of. And how quickly they turn that around, I'm not really sure, but I think that it's pretty quick, well before 45 days.
So it's definitely worth taking the 30-minute meeting time, and it's a lot of times it's less than that, right? You're only talking for 10 of it. If you do have a case, you know, but that's the first thing to find out. Do I really have a case? Is it, are there really no comps? And I can just tell you from doing market analysis myself, when I first learned about how appraisers come up with value, and I had to, I was representing my mom's house, and I did a really fair market evaluation, came up with it, but 8 months later, the price, by the time this was day of short sales, the price really decreased. And so with the appraiser, I said, no, her house is worth more than that. I did a market analysis, and he goes, when did you do it? You know, well, it was old. So yeah, that doesn't work. You know, data changes. So definitely need to have that. I learned that right away, how it is. And he's like, I don't, you have to have proof, you know, if you're going to try to change any kind of appraiser or assessor's mind.
Yeah. And if you have, you know, a lot of times, you know, if you don't have a market analysis, but let's say you had a recent appraisal, maybe you had an appraisal done on your home
Or
during that
refinance.
valuation period, that's gold for us, right? If you, maybe you had just purchased the home, maybe you had just done a refinance. If you have access to that appraisal, or even if you just knew what that appraised value was by a licensed appraiser, you know, this is all really great information to help you strengthen your case.
I'm going to stop for a second. Len had a really good question. Len, I think you are already unmuted. Do you want to just talk about your question? And if you're having a problem reading it, I will just say, I'll read it. Len said, how do we avoid the problem of gentrification where seniors on fixed incomes are squeezed out of their homes? Remember the California's Proposition 13, 1978, that limited property taxes for such people. So, Jen, I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, I have a feeling that we're going to see that, that we may be seeing a cap on this because, as I explained before, you know, we've got well, here's my little disclaimer. When I think of Whatcom County as a whole and some of the levies and bonds initiatives that we pass, right? We have pretty high property taxes as a result of that. There was a time that I lived out in Oak Harbor, and that community had not passed a school levy for 30 years. That's not the problem that we have around here. And I'm not saying that it's a problem either that we're passing all of these different bonds and levies. That we have a community that's very supportive of schools and EMS and greenways and so on and so forth. And every time we pass those, it's increasing our property taxes, you know, and that also coupled with, again, the lack of inventory, the increased demand, the limited supply, it continues to drive our prices up and up. And yes, I'm not seeing the chat box or really anybody else on this right now, but if it was Lynn, we are hearing you, and we know that this is a problem. And I know that this particular group, the Board of Equalization, we're really taking that to heart, but really our focus is making sure that the values are accurate.
Okay, and I
Yeah.
want to say, I want to address this thing with seniors too, because I am a senior. But basically, depending on your income, and a lot of people don't know this, but you can get a senior exemption from your taxes so that you're paying a lot lower taxes than normal people would pay because you're a senior and you are on a limited income. So I don't remember what the
Yeah,
qualification.
let me tell you, because
Okay.
that's also
Okay, good.
on this notice.
Okay.
This notice that's going to come out.
Oh, great.
So at the bottom, there is a little disclaimer about tax relief. Senior citizens and people with disabilities. If you own and live in a residence or mobile home in Whatcom County, are at least 61 years old or retired because of disability and have a gross annual income, including social security, of 42,000 or less, you may be entitled to a property tax exemption. Qualifying income levels are raising to 52,000 in 2024.
Okay, well, that's good to know. 52,000, so that's the
So
limit of income with
the
Social
other
Security.
group that is seeing a little bit of tax relief is if you have property that is in open space
Mhm.
or timber. You're qualified for a reduction in your taxes as well if it qualifies for open space.
Okay, so seniors are 61 and older. That's the
Seniors are 61 or older,
okay.
and that qualifying income level is going to be 52,000.
Next year.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So that helps. If
Okay.
anybody else has questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and I think we'll have it.
Yeah, or feel free to unmute.
Yeah.
We're a friendly group here.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that everyone's clear on the process. I don't want anybody to feel intimidated by the process. There were a lot of petitions that came in this year, so we're going to be hearing older petitions well into, once you get the new ones, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of confusion around that when new valuation notices come out. But we're going to just have to cross that bridge when we get there.
Okay.
Did I go through everything?
I had a question, just that I'm looking at my assessment, the same paperwork. And I couldn't locate any details about my property or home. And I feel like I'm missing something, just to check for accuracy when you said, like, is it really the square footage that they have? And
yeah, I would go get onto the assessor's website.
okay.
Yeah, because you're right. The valuation notice doesn't state that, at least in Whatcom County. Maybe they do in other counties. But on ours, it really is just talking about the property ID number, the previous value, and the new value.
Thank you for clarifying. And I feel like what I'm hearing overall is, because our area is so desirable and because sounds like they've right-cited the percentage of the value, like we are going to be held to account, that there's no real relief in sight.
I think that it's going to stabilize. I think my feeling on this is that I don't know, penalized. I don't want to say it that way. Maybe the fact that the assessor's office kept our values low as long as they did, and that really caught up with them according to the Department of Revenue. And now we're all kind of suffering that. But we could have been suffering earlier than we are now. But I think that it is quite a shock to people. And one of this is my favorite question, you guys. So don't be surprised if you go before the board and people are coming in and they give me a value. The question I'm going to ask is, would you sell your house for that price? And a lot of times I get this blank stare because you want the tax value to be lower, and there's no way that you would ever sell your house for that low value. So if you can honestly say, and there have been a lot of petitioners that say there's no way in the world that I could get this price, and this is why. If you can clearly articulate that and you can give us enough evidence to overrule it, then we do. I think it's absolutely worth your time. It's your right. In the entire state. I'm really proud of this, and it's a testament to our clerk. Her name is Jennifer. We have the highest attendance rate of people appealing in the entire state in Whatcom County. We really are encouraging it.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, I think I've talked about the whole process. Are there any questions about that? I did list some helpful resources here for you. If you want to get on the Whatcom County Assessor's site, if you want to get on the Board of Equalization site, if you, I left Laurie off of this just to spare her. But if you can contact either one of us, of course. If you have questions, if you want us to run a market analysis. I had a lot of clients reach out this year. A lot of my clients know that I'm on the Board of Equalization, and a lot of my realtor colleagues are asking me a lot of questions too. So please don't hesitate. I'm happy to look into it for you. Meredith.
I just want to say something. Thank you for all this great information. I actually took notes. I had called the county when we saw how much our property tax went up, and I didn't get to go in the timeline that you were talking about. And I told them some of the information, and then I realized I'm going to just have to wait till this fall. But then recently I got something in the mail. I got a check that they had made a mistake, they realized, and sent me back. I mean, that's without me even going to the county and doing all. And I was pretty impressed by that. So I just wanted to share that
Oh, good.
they did realize that they had overcharged us. So
Wow. Oh, good. Good
Yeah.
for you. That's awesome.
That's awesome. I love to hear the good news, and that
Mhm.
the county did something right.
And Rex, for you, I just looked up while we're talking right here. This is Whatcom County, but the median price home right now is 630. But 5 years ago, the median priced home was, let me go back to September, the same time, 397. So I don't know what percent that is, but you know what I mean? So that's just what I can tell you, and if Bellingham, I can, do the same thing, but that's the kind of information where you had a graph like this. This is where we do have access to this kind of stuff, where now if I look in Bellingham in September 2019, that the median priced house was 439, and now it's 725. So again, whatever percent, but you can, I can just look at this graph and go up, we kind of stay level for a little bit, but then starting in 2020, they did start medium, our homes typically go up by about 4% a year. That would be average over 40 years. But in 2020, they started going up like 16-20%. Which was crazy. They're not going up that much right now. Like I said, in Bellingham, it's around 9%, in Whatcom County 7%, but they were going up 20% a year for a few years there. It was ridiculous. And that COVID was, where we thought it was going to level out right before COVID started, because typically home prices don't continue up like this. We are due. I can tell you we're due for home prices to come down. 12 years of prices going up is not typical. So there's, but who knows? I mean, that's what none of us know for sure what's going to happen with the economy and, but home prices, all I can say is, we're looking at numbers and prices have continued up.
Any other questions that we can answer?
Is there somewhere I can find out more detail about the open space or timbered land considerations and how that might be framed in terms of the valuation of the property?
Sure. Do you have a specific question right now?
Well, it's I've got a significantly large property with a lot of timber,
Mhm.
and it appears that it was just assessed based on, hey, you got this many acres, so
Mhm.
there's your part of the valuation.
Yeah. Do you have any sort of forest management plan?
We're surrounded by land that Bellingham has bought and turned into those timber
The
the
open
timber
management
sales.
plan,
Yeah,
but you don't have that. Yours is not designated that.
it's not designated,
So
no.
you might want to have that yours designated if you're not going to do anything with it, Rex. That's one way to take care of that. But anyways, Jen, you go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, just yeah, I would get on the whose site. I think if you get on the assessor site, you're going to be able to find I'm just looking at this. I think if you get on the assessor site, there should be some information about different programs that you can qualify for with open space, farm, ag, forest land. I have an RCW that I can give you that I'm reading here. RCW 84.33 or 84.34.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and just having owned a large parcel that was heavily forested, when we did our forest practices application, we did, just a real a sustainable harvest on the property, and we did get a 7-year moratorium placed on the property. It didn't matter to us, we had carved out the 1 acre home site that we wanted and then left the rest of it in forestry and got a considerable tax break on that. So that could give you a little bit of relief there, hopefully. Because
Okay.
because what they do is they tax the residential piece at one rate, and then the remaining open space is considerably less.
Okay, everyone, I am going to last call for questions. Otherwise, we're going to wrap this up.
I do actually have one more question, but it's
Sure.
potentially embarrassing for me, but I don't know. But what
There's
comes
no bad
first?
questions, Katie.
What comes first when the voters vote and we decide on, levies and school, whatever the amount that needs to be raised, then does that affect the evaluations of how much money they need to collect from homeowner taxes? Or is it truly based on the value in the area? And then when we vote, if we need more, those things are just assessments, or I'm not sure what follows what.
So when you go on to the assessor site or probably the treasurer's site and you look, you can pull up your property information and then you can see the whole list of things
Yeah.
that have been voted on.
Yes, I have that.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm going to be answering your question accurately, but those things come and go, right? You've got like
Yeah.
4-year bonds and levies, and
Yeah.
they whatever the vote was put out, it's a certain percentage of your property's
Yes.
value. I don't know if that's, am I?
Yes, no, I appreciate that, and I can see where it's all going.
Yeah.
But if the voters vote certain things in and it turns out we need to find more monies, the county, does that affect the way that they do our homeowners valuation?
No, no,
Okay.
it's strictly by sales data.
Okay,
So yeah,
Good question.
yeah, it's a really good.
that
question.
answers my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else? All right, well, thank you, everybody. Good luck with your tax, with have fun with taxes, but
Yeah,
so
just
hopefully
be-
now you
just-
know what's up with taxes.
Yeah, just be on the lookout. The assessor's office did say they're trying to get those out by the 18th of this month. I doubt it's going to be sooner, but it could be later. But just keep an eye out.
Okay, all
Thank
right,
Thank you.
go enjoy the sunshine,
Yes.
everyone. Thanks for taking the time to be here today. Bye.
Bye.